Mute everyone, please. Welcome to yet another live episode, Pound for Pound Box Report. We're back after a few weeks off. Episode 461. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me, per usual, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from 4Boxing News and the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
We are providing a public service tonight for any of you that need a distraction from tomorrow's election day shenanigans.
Listen.
Here we are. You don't need to think about it. I'm not going to
Listen.
Let's talk boxing.
Indeed. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, etc. Talking all things boxing. Motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information, please go to the site, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find where to check out Pound for Pound Box Report all over the socials, links to the Facebook, Twitter, IG page, links to the YouTube channel. If you wish to contribute, got Cash Me, PayPal donation links. I prefer you use PayPal because with Cash Me right now, they have a new policy where you can only give a certain limit. You can only donate a certain limit per day, per month, per week, yada, 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 per donation. Nobody likes it. I don't either. But if you wish to contribute during this upcoming holiday season, we just finished Halloween, heading fast full bore into Thanksgiving and Christmas. Wouldn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5, whatever you wish to contribute. We will be grateful about that. Last but certainly not least, for my fellow fitness enthusiasts, please check out the link to Body, BODI, formerly known as Beachbody On Demand. Again, with the holiday season coming, you want to get the pounds off because we all tend to overconsume on the holiday foods. Body has programs for any and all suitable interest. At the very least, take advantage of the 14-day trial. And that is for 14 days, you get free access to any and all programs on Body, including introductory workout for any future programs that set to debut. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 rounds, and that is a 6-week program. 3 days devoted to boxing-based cardio, 2 days devoted to weightlifting and resistance work. And let's get things going again. We've been off a while. My schedule has been crazy and hectic. Some personal family tragedy on my part, and so I had no choice but to take some time off. And but we are back now, talking all things boxing. Let's get things going, and let's start with the Golden Boy card that took place this past Saturday. There were 2 cards that were happening in and around the same time. Golden Boy promoted event on the Zone, a top ranked promoted card on ESPN Plus. Let's start with the Golden Boy card first. I didn't mean for this to happen, but I usually begin with ladies first, and we're going to start with the ladies fight first, and Gail, and that is fight for what was the undisputed belt at flyweight between 3 belt champion Gabriela, Alaniz, and Gabriela Fundora, who had the IBF belt. Gabriela, for those who do not know or been sleeping under a rock, Gabriela is the younger sister of Sebastian Fundora, who's set to fight Errol Spence early 2025, right? And early rounds, highly competitive. I felt that Alaniz got Fundora attention. My apologies for the phone ringing in the background. Got Alaniz got Fundora's attention in the back in roughly round 2 or 3, but when Fundora began to find her bearings, if you will, begin to box more on the outside, she gained more control. And round 7, she really poured it on, put Alaniz down twice, stopping her later on in that round. She becomes undisputed champion, Gail. And for me, Fundora Gabriela has been one of the more impressive fighters in 2024, men or women. I think she's the possible future of. To me, she's the future of women's boxing, and I know the year has yet to end. But when I look at Fundora's overall work in 2024, there's a strong argument that as it stands right now, she's the leading candidate for Women's Fighter of the Year, especially coming off of this emphatic stoppage win.
She's certainly in the discussion. So we have to be cognizant that in a little over 10 days, we're going to get the long-awaited Taylor Serrano rematch. So we'll put her on hold for now. But I have been watching Gabriela on the rise the last few years here in Southern California. She, like her brother, is from the high desert Coachella, Indio area where there's just a hotbed of talent. They are a fighting family. Mom was an amateur champion. Dad, Freddie, is the trainer. You've got Sebastian. You've got Gabriela. By the way, there are 3 other Fundora brothers. And there is one younger sister. And both Sebastian and Gabriela say the younger sister is a better fighter than they are, which is a scary proposition. Like her brother, for those of you who haven't seen Gabby, she is also very tall. That DNA is strong. So she is a 5'9" flyweight, ladies and gentlemen. 5'9", which means she towers over her opponents in the division, just like her brother towers over his opponents. And like her brother, she could be fighting from the outside. Her height and reach advantage is always going to be substantial, but she likes to mix it up, just like her brother. The difference is she has probably, for her size, got more power than her brother does, which is astonishing. She gets it. She's fan friendly. She's very friendly with the media. She is always out greeting the fans. And she understands that, especially in women's boxing, the fans like knockouts. I had a chance to interview her before the fight a few days before. I asked her who her favorite fighters were, who had influenced her. And the first words out of her mouth were Arthur Beterbiev. And the next 2 words out of her mouth were Gennady Golovkin. She also said for the women, Christy Martin and Ann Wolfe. So this is what she's about, and that's what she delivered. Now, Alaniz is a very fine champion. She's got that Argentinian toughness. She earned those 3 belts and then some that she put up against Gabriela's one last belt that she wanted to capture. She's still a fairly young fighter. It wasn't, a young 20-something versus a 38-year-old veteran by any means. And Alaniz put up a very good effort. She is not afraid to take a punch, to land a punch. So early on, she came right at Gabriela, and she, in the 3rd round, tagged her quite a few times. I think that got Gabriela settled as to what was in front of her and what she needed to do. So I think she backed off smartly a little bit, got her bearings, started figuring out the range, the accuracy, what did she need to do. And when she decided to pour it on, she poured it on. Now in the 6th round, the round before her stoppage, she tagged Alaniz with a body shot, and she wobbled her. And she got back to the corner, and she said after the fight, she mentioned it to her father. She also mentioned that she heard Bernard Hopkins, who's working with Golden Boy these days, yelling at her from outside the ring to hit Alaniz to the body, and she did. And the game plan was to let Alaniz, who's mostly a volume puncher, get a little bit worn down before Gabriela really went after her. And that's exactly what happened. She pegged her to the body, could tell she was starting to get fatigued, and the danger coming at her was starting to diminish. She first knocked her down with a left, right, left combination. popped her right on her backside, rattled her cage pretty hard, but Alaniz got up. It was only 10 seconds later that she absolutely blew her down and spun her over face first with a left hook. And Alaniz, bless her, she was not going to go easily. She got back up. She was wobbly, but the referee would have let her continue, except her corner threw in the towel. So an absolutely terrific win that makes Gabriela unified, undisputed champion. And it also made history because she is now the youngest unified, undisputed champion, and that includes the Ring Magazine belt. In boxing, male or female, she beat the record held by, either of you two know who previously held the record? Put you on the spot.
Clueless.
Devin Haney. She beat Devin Haney's record, who held it at
Oh,
20.
wow.
Yeah, it was Devin Haney at 23 years and 220 days. Gabriela now holds it at age 22 and 219 days. And she is very, very proud of that record. It's something she decided she wanted to try to achieve, and by God, she did it. She dedicated the fight to Oscar De La Hoya. That's why she wore gold trunks into the ring, so she said. And Oscar is now starting to call her the Golden Girl. I wonder if that's going to stick. But Golden Boy has a real star on its hands, and I hope they treat her accordingly. What she does from here, maybe she wants to try to defend it at least once. She was also asked, could she drop down to the 108-pound division at 5'9"? And she laughed, and she can do it. So that's actually a possibility, that she drops back down to 108, tries to collect all the straps there, and starts marauding up through the weight divisions, just like Naoya Inoue. It's going to be a crazy fun thing to watch.
Due to her height, Daniel, as Gail alluded to in her overall size, 5'9". And for those who want to make a comparison, Clarissa Shields holds a heavyweight title. She's listed. She's 5'8", 5'9", right? And yet you have Fundora, who's 5'9", currently fighting at 112. Um, the undisputed champion now. The world is her oyster. I would argue right now from 108 going up to what, 18, 22, 26, right? Because of her frame, she can put on weight and presumably not lose speed, power, right? Um, excuse me, right quick. Speed or power. Now we will talk about this a little bit later, but Super Bad Estrada, who is who was undisputed champion at 108 pounds, announced her at 105, excuse me, announced her retirement. Um, you have Evelyn Bermudez, who's at unified champion at 108. Where do you see Fundora going next? Do you think that she would want drop down to 108 to fight a Bermudez, to fight possibly a Yocosta Valle, who regained a belt at 105 pounds over the weekend? Do you think that Fundora could entertain the option of moving up to 115 and fighting someone like a Haruta, who's a spunky, flashy uh, champion, WBO virgin from Japan, or fighting Lascarat, who's WBA champion. The world is Fundora's oyster right now. Um, De La Hoya, as Gail alluded, De La Hoya envisions her as the superstar, the future superstar of women's boxing. Um, I'm not going to push back against that, especially based on what we saw over the weekend.
Luckily for her, she's young enough to actually do that jump, going from 115 down to 105. She's young enough to do it. I would probably say, given the current machinations, it wouldn't surprise me her going down in weight, because obviously when the Valle fight is a very interesting one simply because it is a Golden Boy connected fighter, so it's technically still an in-house fight, and it is against somebody who probably was one of the, at least in competition wise, determining factors in Seniesa's decision to retire, which I know we're going to talk about. But I could see going down a little bit in weight just to see how her body reacts to it before trying to go up. Because luckily for her, because she has the distinction of being the youngest undisputed champion, man or woman, in the sport. So she has the time where to go up and have her body grow into that. So I would probably see her testing going down first. Might be a little bit more lucrative, and it's probably easier to do an in-house fight with Golden Boy than trying to go up at the moment.
I know it can't happen now because it may be too far a jump up in weight for Fundora right now. But a fight I would love to see, um, let's just say in the next year to 18 months, assuming that Seniesa Estrada stays retired. You know who I would like to see in there with Fundora, Gail, and Daniel? I would love to see her test the waters and move and work her way up to 118 fight Dina Thorslin. Pound for pound, reigning WBA champion at 118. I think she's a dominant, fantastic fighter at that weight. I don't think Thorson has any competition for her at 18 or 22. Uh, if Fundora can put the weight on the right way, and if Golden Boy can do their work behind the scenes, why not try to make a fight between her and Thorslin, get Thorslin out of her home country? I think she fights out of Denmark, and try to bring her to the United States to fight Fundora and say the end of 2025, early 2026.
You know, I think that the better process from Fundora's side, from a physical performance standpoint, is, let's remember again, she's 5'9" at 112 pounds, which she seems to be able to make no problem. Just freaky, okay? And I'm imagining as she starts to age into her 20s, the opportunity to grab belts in that division at 108 is going to start escaping her. So if she's ever going to do it, it has to be now. Like, let's knock that out, get it out of the way. And then the smart thing to do is not jump around and wait. Just systematically start knocking those divisions out, 108 back, she wants to abandon the flyweight titles at some point, fine, then go back up to 115, clean that out, 118, clean that out. We have that blueprint if she truly does follow the champions like Inoue, like Pacquiao, who just racked those belts up. Because I wouldn't be surprised that the next goal she sets for herself off in the distance is, how many different divisions can I become a world champion in? And what's the current record now? It is Shields, I think. So, she's got a long runway for that and a long time to do it. She's what, 10 years younger than Claressa is? So, but the women that are in these divisions, she's not quite that
Clarissa's
much.
not 30. She's not even 30 yet, Clarissa.
Okay, but she's still quite a bit younger. Let's put it that way. And, the women to get high-level competition frequently do have to go up and down. In fact, the Serrano sisters are, two that have really jumped around among weight divisions. You know, long term, that is hard on you. That's very hard on you to go back and forth like that. They've been willing to do it, you know, to get the best opportunities, and it has ended up paying off, at least for Amanda. You know, to do it the right way, it really should be just an upward ladder, little by little by little. And I think Oscar would be the first person to tell you, you know, you can really push it too far. So let's see what happens. And I think that I would counsel patience, and let her progress up, and let time, you know, time and, you know, a careful upward trajectory be the determining factor for her.
Fair enough.
Because she's going to be the A side, honestly. She, yeah, if she isn't now, it won't be much long before there are going to be very few other women out there who will be chasing her versus the other way around.
Fair enough. Fundora, Alaniz took place on the undercard of young up and coming lightweight Floyd Schofield, who fought Rene, Tellez, Giron, Daniel. And for me, Schofield got the win, but the thing I gathered, the thing I in the aftermath of all this, my conclusion is I should say, is that Schofield, he's good, he's pretty talented, but is he ready for the elite fighters at 135? No. He got hurt in this fight in round 3, got put down in round 11. And the thing that bugs me about Schofield is that his youthful exuberance to fight when he doesn't need to fight, right? When he was in boxing mode, he had this match pretty much under control. But the couple of times that Jaron hit him, he felt this wanting desire to fight back. And even after the fight, he admitted that, yeah, he was in boxing mode, but he wanted to stand there and trade just to put on a show, right? You don't need to do that. Part of the problem is because he's so young and so eager. But another part of the problem is there's flaws in his game, offensively and more importantly, defensively. Too often he loves to keep his head up. He leaves himself open to get butted. And he also leaves himself open to get hit. He called out Shakur Stevenson after the fight, was even talking about fighting Shakur before this contest. Does he have anything from Shakur based on this fight? Absolutely not. Shakur would box the mess out of him.
Yeah, this is a situation where you have a fighter that's very, very young, and he wants to prove himself. Most young fighters really just mainly want to prove themselves in that front. And 135, you know the division is becoming hot once again. The issue is, unfortunately, is that unfortunately, for one, he can get cut very easily. In fact, they showed it, I think, either in the pre-fight or in between rounds, how he got cut in the cheek once in the headbutt, and then I forgot another one was by the eye. So he can be cut pretty easily. That's one problem. And then on the other one is that, like, I know he wants to prove himself, but you don't get into fights where you don't need to. And just like with Gabriela, it doesn't look like Golden Boy and Oscar are in that much of a rush to actually try to get him in the Shakur. Not because they don't think he can beat Shakur eventually. It's just that you can tell there's still some rough edges that you have to really, really smooth out before you can send it to somebody like Shakur or somebody like Tank in that front. But Luckily, he did enough, like I said, to win this fight handily. I think when Rene was interviewed, he mentioned that he's probably looking to see between 2 or 3 more fights before he really, really steps up as far as either being in contender status or be ready to have a possible shot at Shakur. And if they keep him active, he can get to those 2 or 3 of those fights by the end of next year. But he has to focus on making sure that his feet don't get trapped in somebody a different stance. And as much as we love the sport to have these guys going at it toe for toe, if that is not your strength, a lot of times at the moment, focus on boxing and then you'll grow into it as you get older, as you get tougher. That's probably what Schofield needs to do.
Sorry, I was on mute. Time, young man, time. Gold Oscar De La Hoya is absolutely right in with his assessment after the fight. As you said, Daniel, there's no need to rush this kid, because really that's what he is. He's only 22, I think, in his early 20s. Let me say, because I can't remember the exact age. Anyway, there's still plenty of room to develop, to round some things out, to work on some things, not just his offense and defense, but the transition from offense to defense and vice versa. And keep your chin tucked and your head down, and quit coming in the center line, leaving yourself open to get hit and to get cut. He made this fight more difficult than it needed. And again, thinking about Shakur, no, not now, not now. Give him a couple more years to grow, and then maybe you'll put him in a position for a world title shot. But speaking of fighters who are in line, I should say, for a possible world title shot, Gail. I mentioned how this card was happening at the same time of a top ranked card on ESPN Plus, right? Raymond Muratalla, who is a lightweight fighter in the top ranked stable, blowout win over Jesus Perez, stopped him in 3 rounds. After that win, he's talking about winning a world title fight. For me, Gail, Muratalla is much more deserving of a world title shot than the fighter who we previously just talked about, Schofield. I liked how he looked in this fight. Even in his previous fight, the close win over Tevin Farmer, I like how he adjusted there. And in watching the highlights, Gail, it seemed that Muratalla learned from what he went through in the former fight and applied it in this fight against Perez. He's getting better. He's gaining more confidence. He's calling out anybody who wants smoke, any of the champions who want smoke. I don't know if he'll be able to get it because, Shakur's injured. Baranchek, he may fight the winner of the upcoming fight between Keyshawn Davis and Lemos. Loma, you don't know with him. He's contemplating retirement. But when it comes to the young up-and-coming prospects at 135, be it Davis, be it Schofield, be it Muratalla, who are all ranked, I think Muratalla is just as deserving or more deserving than anybody of the young and up-and-coming group.
Yeah, he certainly is. Muratalla is fearless. He's learning quickly. Yeah, the problem is getting him these matchups. That's what's been frustrating for him, is feeling stalled getting up to the next level. But he's doing the right thing about staying busy with it's always the best available opponent, right? These aren't the ones he wants. Best available. And the reason that Perez was an important opponent is, despite the record, he'd never been stopped, never been knocked down, never been stopped.
That's right.
Muratalla did that and did it in spectacular fashion. You know, it
with
wasn't
ease.
with ease. Exactly. It wasn't a, beat down by attrition 10, after 10 rounds, they throw in the towel kind of thing. No, no, no. He blasted him out of there. That's exactly what he needs to do, because what will also help his case in getting the bigger fights is getting the attention of the fans. Very smart. Flashy knockouts, big talk, building the base of people who say, "Man, I want to see that guy again." He took a lot of fights in the bubble, right, during the pandemic, as did his brother, younger brother, who's kind of faded back, but that helped him. Again, activity is so important. So he took care of business with Farmer. He's taking care of business with Perez. Let us see him against somebody. Maybe he, takes on another veteran if he can't get a current champion. Everybody's doing the Shakur dance, right? And it's all going to depend on how Shakur comes back from his surgery, how quickly they get him back in the ring. That's still not a given exactly as to what's going to happen. In theory, he was supposed to have already taken a tune-up and then gone in to fight William Zepeda. Well, will he go right to that fight? In theory, he should be ready at the timing for that fight, but is that the fight he wants to come back from surgery on? And I think the answer is hell no, because I think Zepeda is a very serious threat to Shakur because of, how different their styles are. So if he takes a tune-up and Zepeda has to be backed off again, I don't think you want to put Muratalla in against him, but that's, draws out the timeline. So it's going to be tough negotiating, and it's going to be a real fight outside the ring for Muratalla to get fights inside the ring, but he is doing what he can to make his best possible case. So fingers crossed for him. He really does deserve it. He is earning it.
And Zepeda, by the way, is fighting the aforementioned Tevin Farmer on the undercard of Zerto Ramirez, Chris Billum
Yeah,
Smith
that's going
in
to,
Saudi Arabia for the interim WBC belt on November 16th. Kind of sucks that Farmer, who lost to Muratalla, is getting that kind of opportunity.
right.
While
Just
Muratalla has to
to
wait.
just to make it clear, Muratalla.
Muratalla, excuse me.
Muratalla. He's a Mexican American Californian, so that's a
Yeah, my
Muratalla.
apologies. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. On the
yeah, yeah. Well,
on the
so of course Zepeda's going through his tune-up fight because he was going to wait for Shakur to take his and then get that matchup. So this is going to throw off the timeline a little bit. See what happens, and that's going to be a wipeout in my opinion.
Muratalla's win, Daniel, took place on the undercard of the rematch between OShaquie Foster and Robson Conceicao. They fought earlier this year. Most people, myself included, I believe everybody here, felt that Foster won, but to the surprise of most, Conceicao got the decision. Uh, boxing Twitter, uh, boxing social media in general was ticked off to the point that the WBC had no choice but to order this rematch. It happened in their previous outing, Daniel. Foster did a lot more, was the boxer. In this rematch, he was more aggressive, got out to a bit of a slow start, but starting in the middle rounds, he picked it up. He got the decision. Your assessment of this fight, and where do you think that Shaq Foster goes from here? I'm hearing that he wants to unify.
I can understand where OShaquie Foster wanted to change his game plan a little bit from the previous fight, because even though he did everything correctly as far as defense, as far as being a better boxer, unfortunately, a lot of times aesthetically, the guy who throws the more punches, looks to be aggressive, tends to be winning out, which is unfortunately what happened. He changed his tune a little bit in this case, but not in the first 2 or 3 rounds. He tried to be a little bit more of a boxer in those 2 or 3 rounds, which allowed Conceicao to try to get a little bit of a rhythm going in those rounds. But I think from like the middle of the third round on, you started to see Foster polish up his defense a little bit more and get a little bit of aggressive. And the punishment was starting to accumulate. And then the 10th round happened, where he lands a beautiful right hand, and you can tell Conceicao's hurt. And from then on, from that point on, you knew Foster had more or less control of the fight. The bad part is, unfortunately, he needed that to win out because this was a split decision. 115, 113 cards all around. 2 judges had it for Foster. 1 had it for Conceicao. This, to me, is a situation where you have 2 fighters whose styles make it very, very difficult to say that you have a clear winner. It's always going to be a close type of fight. But Foster, luckily, he understood enough where I had to become a little bit more aggressive. You had to show that you were willing to stand toe-to-toe while at the same time still maintain your P's and Q's on defense. Because in a lot of the times that Conceicao tried to do a flurry on it, it landed more or less on the gloves or the elbows. So with Foster, like I say, he regains his belt, a belt that we can all agree, I think amongst the 3 of us, he never should have lost. And now he should unify. The division is pretty ripe right now to be able to unify, because 130 is probably going to be the best division for him to stay. I don't think he has enough to do at 135 at the moment, so he should focus on 130, focus on unification. And you've shown that if you learn, at least from your first fight, that you do have to mix a little bit more offense with a defensive-minded game plan, but he showed he has enough pop where he can focus on offense better if he needs it. But a good performance overall by OShaquie Foster.
Listen, Navarrete and Valdez are going to fight a rematch later on this year. I think next month. If I'm OShaquie Foster, I'm right there at ringside. I'm prepared to call out the winner. Navarrete, we saw what he did in his last fight. Didn't look so good. Valdez, he's an old warhorse at 126, 130 pounds, but he's getting up there in age, right? There's some wear and tear on his body. Shot Foster, shoot for the winner of that. If Lamont Roach, a lot of people believe he's going to lose to Tank Davis. Let's just put it out there. When they fight January 2025, I go for him in a unification bout as well. I go for a potential unification bout against him as well. So kudos to Shaq. He got the revenge he wanted in their options, and that's what you really want as a fighter, particularly as a world champion who's looking to make some money. There are options for him at 130 pounds, and those are the 2 front and center as far as I'm concerned. Let's move to some news here. We talked a few episodes back, Gail, about Turkey Alex Sheik and the inroads he has made in the sport. And within that, we talked about how there are 2 main fighters who did not need what Daniel called the blood money. One was Gervonta Davis, and the other one was Naoya Inoue, right? Because of the success they've had on their own, doing their own thing, right? Well, news has come down within the past 24 to 36 hours that Monster Inoue has signed a deal with Riyadh season. The money, how much it's worth, numerous reports on that. Nothing has been finalized. But your reaction to Gail, Naoya Inoue signing a deal with Turkey Al-Sheikh?
Well, before everybody gets extremely excited about this, it is not quite the same as some of these other fighter deals that have been signed, this is more of a sponsorship type deal. It does not mean that Inoue is going to suddenly be fighting in Saudi Arabia, as probably not it. What Inoue, as I understand it, has agreed to is somewhat of an ambassador status. The deal's worth about $20 million, to serve as a liaison between the Japanese boxing world, Japanese promoters and authorities. It'd be their ambassador to the Saudi General Entertainment Authority in Turkey, Al-Sheikh. This is not paying Inoue to fight on Riyadh season cards. So, at least at this point, he talks about this being a contract for his future career. That could mean future outside of the boxing ring, assuming he wants to stay in boxing and wants to take on this sort of managerial ambassadorship negotiator type role. The one thing it does mean now is apparently he will be wearing a Riyadh season logo on his boxing trunks for his future fights. But there is nothing in the contract, apparently, that mandates he fight in Saudi Arabia or on a Riyadh season card. Now, he may watch one in the audience and be visible. So that's the kind of money the Saudi General Entertainment Authority has to throw around to just simply buy themselves a relationship with Naoya in a way. That's where we are now. But it is an interesting turn of events. Money does talk. This was a way for them to both do business together without Inoue having to do deals for his actual boxing activities in any way. That there's no change there. We'll see how many other fighters reach these similar agreements. Now, we do know that Turkey Al-Sheikh and the Saudi General Entertainment Authority have somewhat of a similar arrangement with Terence Crawford. He is also paid outside of any fights that are negotiated. He also has this sort of amorphous ambassador role that he gets paid for. Who knows what that really means, right? Is that money that means when Turkey DMs them or places a phone call, they'll answer? That they'll show up in the audience and, make it look good for the Saudis because all the big names are at his fights? Maybe. But it does show that, there's so much money to be thrown around. Once these deals get negotiated and the fighters could kind of sidestep outside of their normal role and do business, I get why they say yes. So far, the one holdout who I think will forever be a holdout is Canelo Alvarez.
Inoue fights Christmas Eve against Sam Goodman, a mandatory defense, right? And the thought is he will eventually fight Juto Nakatani at some point in 2025, right? I go to you, Daniel. Assuming that schedule is comes to pass, what's afterwards? I ask because when it comes to Turkey Al-Sheikh, the one fight that he's always talked about when it comes to Inoue is a showdown with Tank Davis. Now, to me, that makes no sense. But as we talked about in our previous discussions with Turkey Al-Sheikh, for the most part, outside of Canelo, whatever he seemingly wants, more times than not, he gets. The future of Inoue 2025 and beyond with this deal in place with Riyadh season. What do you see?
First, I'll say that I am disappointed Yeah, that even though it's technically a sponsorship, yeah, he's gonna have a Riyadh season marker on his shorts, on his gear. That's the current extent of it, but unfortunately, it does mean that Inoue is unfortunately open to the blood money. That being said, that's going to be an interesting situation because Inoue understands that he doesn't have to go anywhere else for him to make really, really big money. He can stay in Japan and make people come to him. And I got to see how this is going to push because I don't think I'm not even the set. I'm the type of person that I'm not even going to give him the dignity of the name. I'm going to call him what I call him. I think the blood money mark's going to start really like touching the toes a little bit after his first fight. Maybe after New Year's Eve, like he's going to be, you can try, you can try Tank. Tank would probably take the fight, even though with Tank it's a situation where you never know who he's going to fight, and to a certain level until almost a week before at this stage. But I feel a situation where he's going to try to needle in a way into a fight in Saudi Arabia against his preferred opponent because that's the way unfortunately Saudi Arabia operates. It doesn't matter if it's boxing, doesn't matter if it's MMA, doesn't matter if it's WWE. They are going to needle and try to get things their way no matter what. And ultimately, it really just depends upon somebody's actual constitution and determination whether they'll stick around or not. Canelo and Tank is still at the moment. Canelo might be the legit actual holdout because Canelo's done enough of his career where he doesn't need the blood money mark. You can argue that anyway technically already has to a certain point, but there's a reason he made the deal. There is a reason, unfortunately, that he made the deal because that Nakatani fight is gonna bring a lot of money. A lot of money, even as a domestic fight in Japan. Maybe too much money where they cannot make it on their own, so they need, unfortunately, little help overseas. But I see that. I see him fighting Nakatani, and then you're gonna see the blood money, but just needle him, try to gauge into it, and maybe it's either a situation then where anyway just says, okay, this was fun. I no longer want to deal with you, or we'll see anyway in Saudi Arabia.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. What does this mean ultimately for, in a way, what does it mean ultimately for Riyadh season? There's been no details about what's next. It's just this news broke that something is in place that he's Monster has signed a contract. Where it goes from here, I don't know whether how it affects his immediate or long term future. It will be determined. But to Alice Sheik's, for fans of him, he gets another one. Even if it's in the non traditional way, he gets another one in terms of arguably the top pound for pound fighter in the sport. I go back to you, Daniel. Last time we heard anything regarding Seniesa Estrada, uh, she beat Yokasa Valier to become undisputed champion at 108 pounds, right? News broke during our time off that Superbad has decided that she doesn't want to do it anymore. Released a statement via her social media, along with Top Rank, that she's decided to retire. Uh, I personally think that part of this, a large part, has to do, Daniel, with continued issues with her hand. She a lot of damage to her hand, maybe 2, 3 fights ago. Um, Even in the win against Valier, The hand was not 100%, and we now know that it may never be 100% again. Um, as much as I would love to see her continue to fight, as much as I would have liked to see a potential fight with Superbad and Sebastian, I mean Gabriela Fundora at a catchweight, it looks for the time being that's not going to happen.
Yep, and she
Any
did.
element of surprise? Any element of surprise for you on the announcement from Seniesa Estrada that she's decided to call it a day and hang up the gloves?
A bit surprised. Yes, there is a bit of surprise to me on my part because Seniesa is a very, very proud fighter. He's a very, very proud woman when it comes to her skills, when it comes to the fighting. And you could tell that a lot of the times the hand and the subsequent talk that she wasn't the same fighter that she was a few years ago would get to her and maybe wanted to prove people wrong, particularly in the Valle fight, because we have to admit, like 1.5 to a year ago, before this fight was made, most of us would probably think that Seniesa would bulldoze Valle. It wouldn't be a fair fight. And it turned out to be a lot more competitive and a lot more even than we thought it was going to be. Now, that's also a credit to Valle improving as a fighter. But you also can tell that Seniesa not only has those unfortunate issues with the hand, she does have interests outside of the ring as far as fighting. She can always stay as a commentator. She can help train. She can help be a trainer in that area, or she could just fully retire because we don't. In her personal life, she knows she's taken some steps that may have her think of differently things to do. So it's a little bit surprising, but given the way that how her fights have been and given the situations around her, it shouldn't be as surprising as most of us think. But we are going to miss her. She was one of the best fighters of her era, and it would have been great to her to see her against somebody like Gabriela. It would have been the toe-to-toe fight. It would have been interesting to see, but she'll always have that claim that was undisputed 108. And the one thing she probably holds up more personal than anything, just considering how much she hates that woman, the fact that in the one time that they actually got into it, she beat our good old friend Marlon Esparza pretty handily.
Gail, Superbad had become an ambassador uh, uh, for women's boxing and for women's sports, particularly when it comes to in the American Southwest, in the Latin American market. I would argue that she was now that she's retired, the face of uh, Latin American women's boxing, um, as well as one of the faces of women's sports in general when it comes to the Latin American market. Daniel mentioned she has options. Um, she does have sponsorships and endorsement deals. She could do, if she wants to, commentary for ESPN networks, right? I mentioned world champions having options earlier in the broadcast. She has options outside of the ring, but I can't help it. There's a part of me that still wants to see her fight, even the condition of her hand.
Well, that's a little unfair, I think. She
I
has,
know, I know, I know, I know.
if you've seen, and I highly recommend to all of our listeners, the series ESPN has put together 30-minute profiles of various fighters called The Fight Life. And if anyone had seen the episode with Seniesa, this did not come as a surprise. She is clearly worn down after a 13-year career, 13 years, mind you. She is now 32. She got married. It's funny how everybody has sort of avoided talking about exactly what's gone on in her private life. Seniesa got married to Chris Mannix, well-known NBA sports writer, boxing analyst, podcaster, DAZN broadcaster, earlier this summer. She has really struggled with her injuries. She's also made it clear she has struggled with her mental health because it is tough being a Mexican-American girl from East LA. She was very fortunate to find a gym situation, a trainer who believed in her and was willing to take her on. She didn't get a lot of help on the way up, but she can now say she's a 2-division champion, she's an undisputed champion, and she is an undefeated champion. It's a perfect time for her to say goodbye. She can pursue other interests. She's, who knows what she may want to do, whether it's in boxing or out of boxing. And it is still the case that in her early 30s, just having gotten married, a young man in that situation who wants to start a family doesn't have to quit the sport. A woman in that situation is going to be out for quite a while and may or may not be able to return. So that may have factored in. We'll see down the road whether it did or not. I wish her well. I don't think she'll leave boxing entirely, but if she wants to step away and find out who Seniesa Estrada is outside the ring, bless her and Godspeed.
And we will leave it on that note in terms of that topic. Let's move on to talk about some. One more story. Let me. Queensberry deal. Surprising. Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn indirectly working together. What do you make of all of this? I'll begin the conversation back to you, Gail.
Well, let's make it clear exactly what's going on. It isn't Eddie and Frank working together any more than they already have been as allied promoters. But what's happened recently was an announcement just before the weekend's lineup of cards. Is that Queensberry and DAZN Boxing announced a new agreement, bringing more into the same broadcast arrangements as Matchroom, as Golden Boy Promotions, and as Misfits Boxing, if you want to throw them in the mix. They are all now allied with DAZN as their exclusive broadcaster. Queensberry will make that turnaround permanent, effective from April next year. So he's got to ride out his current contracts with his various broadcasters around the world, but he will then shift all of his fight cards over to DAZN effective April 2025. The way it's being positioned is that with all of these leading promoters now under the DAZN broadcast banner, they will be better able to make fights among the best fighting the best, because that broadcasting barrier is dropped, at least for one major promoter. It's interesting because before this arrangement, Queensberry was more or less the de facto promoter for the Saudis. Very much the same kind of arrangement that Tom Brown and TGB Promotions have on behalf of Premier Boxing Champions. And then they do their business with various broadcasters. And what it's come to be is more or less either Amazon Prime now or pay-per-views. Previously it was Showtime. But the promoter platform is TGB for PBC. Queensberry is essentially the promoter platform for the Saudis. And the other folks are working with them on their various deals. But it means, the bigger power base for the Saudis. It also means that there is some consolidation under the DAZN banner for more major fight cards. They're the Saudi broadcaster of choice because of who they're working with. What this means for the others out there. It isn't a monopoly quite yet. You still
But
do have
it's
top.
going that
You still,
way real fast.
well, you still have Top Rank. However, their broadcast deal with ESPN is expiring in the coming year.
Expiring. And they're working with Riyadh, and Top Rank has a relationship with semi or fully with Riyadh. So
well, let's back up. They have a very poor relationship with them. Look at what happened having to bifurcate the deal at the top of the ticket for the Better Bia versus Bevel card. Top Rank did not want to play. They said, nope, we own that fight. You want to put the undercard on your own platform? Great, have at it, enjoy it, good times. We own that fight. They couldn't work a deal. That to me says there is not a whole lot of love lost there. And can you imagine Eddie Hearn doing business over there? Or pardon me, Bob Arum doing business over there? Yeah, to a point. I mean, he isn't running the day-to-day business, his son-in-law, Todd DeBuff, is, but he's going to be a tough negotiator. I'm not quite sure what that's going to mean. The other player that is still out there, admittedly, has talked big and he's still way on the sidelines, but Dana White and UFC Fight Pass still do have a platform, and he's never given up this idea that he could become today's equivalent, at least in the United States, of HBO. He's got Tom Loeffler as his promotional partner. Tom knows his way around this business. He's been at it a long time. But there's no denying that this consolidates a stronger power base for the Saudis and Riyadh season, with Queensberry throwing over to their broadcaster of choice. It really cuts out where it's really going to make the biggest difference is the broadcast audience in the United Kingdom. We are just getting used to being exposed in the United States to the Queensberry cards, but it is interesting to me how the growth and power base of boxing is shifting to the British promoters away from the American promoters. Boxing is still incredibly healthy in Great Britain, and we're seeing the outcome of that.
yeah, but in comparison between Queensberry and what Hearn is doing and what I forgot the other promotional outlet in England.
Boxer.
Help me out.
Ben Shalom.
Boxer. Queensberry was behind, even over there in the UK. So he had to do something. And
I would argue that Queensberry also just re-signed 6 of its main names. They are starting to build, quite a stable. The future, near future of talent is over on the Queensberry side. If you looked at that outcome of the 5 versus 5 little tournament, we all thought that was going to be sort of, fun and games, amusing. Queensberry's fighters pitched a shutout against the Matchroom fighters. And yeah, it was mainly prospects, rising stars. They kicked their asses.
I'm talking about from a non-England perspective, a non-UK perspective. If they want to expand the brand globally.
Right. But you can't say that. All right. So you need to clarify, when you say Queensberry is way behind Matchroom, that's only in the United States. Let me tell you something. That's not where they make most of their money. They make it over there because the fan base is there to support it. And they're not having to charge fans $80 for a pay-per-view because they're making plenty of money at the gate. There's plenty of broadcast rights money. There's plenty of interest. Well, now it's shifting over to the DAZN group. Now, remember, the DAZN group is not based here. They're a British company. Look at the stuff they're airing outside of boxing. If you like snooker and darts, you can get a pretty good snootful of that watching DAZN, even in the United States. So, we're seeing a shift in the power base is what's going on. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of American boxing fans if they're interested in the economics of the business and trying to predict where things go, they're not going to like this very much. But the people in the business have to go where the money is.
Yeah, yeah, but I still think long term, it benefits them greatly than long term than the current course that they're running. What do you make of all of this, Daniel? Because me and Gail are going back at it here, and you're being left out.
Well, I agree with Gail. This is not the Good Friday agreement, folks, between Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn. Well, we'll put it there for a little bit. They're going to be at work together more than they needed to, but it's an expected move, unfortunately, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, the blood money mark's going to speak money, and he has clearly chosen DAZN as his broadcaster of choice. Now, what's going to be interesting is the fact that in the UK, they're going to survive overall, because we can all agree the UK, as far as the boxing scene, is a lot healthier than the US overall. That's in the amateurs and the professional ranks as far as fan support. British fans support their fighters a lot more than Americans with our fighters, save for the top money guys. So that it was a move that was expected to be made, but it also does have a bit of a drawback, because now again, you're in that Saudi sphere. And like I said, we're mentioning anyway, Saudis have this nasty little streak of poking you to get you what you want. And sometimes what may be in the best interest of Frank Warren is not in the best interest of the blood money mark. So you're going to see that clash into it. And like Bob Arum said, a perfectly good example. That entire fiasco in that Beterbiev Bivol undercard, having to be in one network and you have to pay for it, while the main event you got for free, that spoke volumes. Even if we saw the blood money mark cheer for Beterbiev for obvious religious reasons. What's probably going to wind up happening, because as hilarious as Dana's idea of trying to be HBO is, he works for TKO. TKO is also in bed with the Saudis via WWE.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a lot you can escape from it. So you're either going to get the Saudi money through DAZN, or you're going to get the Saudi money through Dana.
Right.
There's little to no escape from it. And like I said, I get it. I get it that it's where the money is, but you're coming to a dangerous situation, because this isn't like when you had the mob try to control boxing, or you had Don King try to monopolize it, Bob try to monopolize it, Oscar try to monopolize it, Eddie try to monopolize it, Al Heyman try to monopolize it. Those were individuals. This is a situation where a person that's a representative of a foreign government is trying to monopolize a sport. Remember, they almost already are going to have somewhat of a monopoly over MMA, because Dana White wants that Saudi money.
Yes,
and
they
already own Bellator. They own PFL. The only two semi-major MMA promotions, and I mean semi-major, that really don't do a lot of work with the Saudis, if not at all, are one championships and Ryzen. And that's because they get their money from either the tryouts or the Yakuza. So it's a very slippery slope situation. Hopefully it does get broken soon, but it's not surprising. It's not surprising. But then again, once again, folks, It is not the Good Friday agreement between Eddie and Frank. I think that'll come when we actually see actual pigs fly.
But it's still, well, no, it's not surprising because ultimately, I think Queensberry, they couldn't resist. Ultimately, money talks, and as Daniel said, and as I keep saying, it's like a perpetual theme um, with Riyadh season. For the most part, not always, but for the most part, what they want, they are getting, and they wanted this to happen. I think behind the scenes, and they are getting it. It's going to benefit Queensberry long term, but at the end of the day, to Daniel's final point, there is a monopoly happening in boxing slowly but surely, and Riyadh season is at the very center of it. Let's move on to talk about some fights that's happening coming up. Where do I want to go? 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 Let's start in Norfolk, where hometown fighter Keyshawn Davis Gill fighting Gustavo Lemos. Lemos, a former belt holder at 135 pounds. Lemos lost, quote unquote, his last fight in uh, questionable nature against Hitchens. There are more than a few boxing fans who felt that Lemos beat Hitchens when they fought earlier this year, and I get the point of why the promoters at Top Rank are putting Davis in there with Lemos, excuse me. But styles make fights, and just like I felt that Lemos could give Hitchens a tough fight prior to their meeting, I think the same thing could happen here. If Davis is not on his game, if he's not just physically and mentally tough, Lemos has that style and that attitude and that hunger, right? That's going to test not just your physical ability, but your will. Put it this way, Gail. I would not be surprised if Gustavo Lemos spoils the apple cart and gets what some would say a surprising win here.
Top Rank is not afraid to test its up and coming prospects. Once they get to a certain point, they're fairly ruthless about wanting to see whether it is worth investing more time, money, and effort in them. And Davis is right at that point. So here we go. They're going to put him in front of somebody that is a step up, perhaps, depending on the performance, a significant step up. And Lemos is no pushover. He's 29-1. He has 19 knockouts. And as you mentioned, that single loss, to Richardson Hitchens, was an eyebrow raiser to some. Not all, but to some. So Lemos is coming back to 135. He had moved up because he was having trouble making the weight. So that is the one sort of thumb on the scale that's in Davis's favor. But it also means that the expectations of Top Rank are, you need to get through this fight. You need to not just squeak through this fight. You need to really get through this fight. You just had Raymond Muratalla blow through his opponent, right? So while they're not going to match up Muratalla and Davis anytime soon, what they are going to have to figure out is, where does the money go? Who's the guy, right, that they're going to throw their promotional and matchmaking weight behind? So Top Rank loves to, dig in and get a lot of fighters in a certain division, and then, it's sort of survival of the fittest internally, right? Dog eat dog. So Davis better be a dog, and he better have a good performance. He's, he is still, at the beginning, just at that point of turning the corner from, prospect to, contender, even though he's only had 11 professional fights, 11 fights with 7 knockouts. But he has the Olympic pedigree, and Top Rank also likes that very much. He's the silver medalist from the Tokyo Games at lightweight. So this is his first fight at home in the Norfolk, Virginia area. So that's a nice carrot for him as well. There's just a lot riding on this fight. It's a Friday night fight. Thank God Top Rank tries, ESPN tries not to make us wait, on a Saturday night after a college football game they have in the past. It'll be a fun card to watch, and there's some interesting fights on the undercard as well.
Listen, Daniel, if Davis is not in elite shape, and if he can't put some hurt on this kid on Lemos, he's in for the fight of his life. I'm just saying.
In many ways, he kind of needs to, because unfortunately, Gail describe how Top Rank is handling the situation, because they don't want to fall. They don't want Keyshawn Davis to fall when I should dub the Berlanga vortex, where you match him and you match him too carefully, and it gets to a point where he stops progressing and may start regressing. And unfortunately, Keyshawn is getting to that point. So this could be a fight that he really needs, where if he's not his P's and Q's, he needs to really slug it out and win it out. Because remember, 135, 140, those are divisions that Top Rank wants to be at the table for. They're currently not, because we mentioned Vasily Lomachenko more than likely is going to retire. And it's probably going to take the negotiating skills of Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton to get Bob and Shakur Stevenson to get on any consensus business-wise.
Look, that bridge may be burned beyond repair.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but that doesn't leave them a lot of pathways to get into the mix at 135. Keyshawn's it. Keyshawn's it, or somebody that you can say is somewhat ready. And so that's the situation that Top Rank put themselves in. And now they're trying to make sure that they already can get this kid ready and see if he's actually the goods. Because, like I mentioned, they've had the similar experience with Edgar Berlanga. And we all seen how that turned out.
Sink or swim time. Sink or swim time for Keyshawn. That's what Top Rank is doing for him. If he wins, a title shot could be up next against Baranchik. If he loses, yeah, not good for him. We will see. We will see, because I said it once and I'll say it again. He has to be on it. He has to be on his P's and Q's against this dude. Lemos is no joke. He showed it in that fight with Hitchens, who's fighting for same Hitchens who's getting ready to fight for a world title at 140 pounds next month, I believe. And so, yeah. Davis talks a whole lot about how good he is and how he's ready for this guy, and he's ready for this champion, he's ready for that champion. Better be ready for Gustavo Lemos in his hometown coming up this Friday in Norfolk, again on ESPN.
And let me jump in and say the other danger for Keyshawn Davis is that he gets completely upstaged by a tremendous talent in Top Rank stable, Abdullah Mason, who is also on this card, who is blowing out opponents in fine style. He's media friendly. He's 15-0 with 13 knockouts. So he may steal the show this Friday.
Yes, the aforementioned Abdullah Mason, who's fighting Johan Vasquez in an 8-round lightweight bout on the undercard of Davis and Lemos. Again, that's going to happen this coming Friday in Norfolk, Virginia on ESPN Plus. On Saturday in Philadelphia, card is going to happen on DAZN. Want to focus on two fights here, Daniel. The first fight is Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who's two-division champion. His last bout, he went back up to 115 pounds, stop future Hall of Famer Juan Francisco Estrada. sensational body shot in it matters in round 7, fighting a Pedro Guevara. Nothing against Guevara, solid guy, but the way Bam looked in the fight with Gallo, given his talent, given his ability, one of the more versatile, one of the most skilled fighters in the game. I love his footwork and I love his attitude, his ability to box and fight, and such experience and guile for such a young man. You have to make him the favorite here against Guevara.
Yeah, this is pretty much almost like a good, like a, I would say a good job type of defense after doing what he did against Gallo.
Nice voluntary title defense in short.
Yeah, just like you took down a legitimate Hall of Famer, somebody who, if he retires today, we'll see him in Castaneda in 5 years. And so we're not saying anything against the opponent. That's too bad. But Bam is a very motivated individual right now. And it would not be surprising if he is hell bent on making this a show, especially on a card where he's technically the undercard. Some may agree that he may argue that he should be in the main event because of what he's accomplished, but we get the situation. But how we had the big drama show and little drama shows when it was Triple G and Chocolatito, we might get this again, and little drama show might come out as the better headline.
Indeed, Bam has emerged as pound for pound status, and his talents are going to be put on full display against Guevara. On the main event, Gail, you have the return of Jaron Boots Ennis, who's going to fight. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. This rematch with Karen. They fought last year, I believe it was. Boots won by decision. This fight is happening not because boxing fans wanted a rematch to happen because of section and body BS, as far as I'm concerned. We would like to see Boots fight other opposition, but it is what it is. This is going to happen again. Boots won the first fight. I believe he will win this one, this rematch upcoming.
Oh, yeah, of course. This is the IBF mandating this fight, which is a rematch.
Giving us something that nobody wanted.
Except for Karen Chukhadzian, who's getting another payday. The unfortunate thing is that Boots and his team just can't say no because his leverage is that belt, and he's got to hold on to it. He's one of these, great risk, low reward fighters is the problem. He still doesn't really have the fan base except among diehards like us and those of you listening. And the belt's his leverage. He isn't a Ryan Garcia with an independent audience and fame. He just goes about his business. He'll eventually
star
get
power
there.
ability, but not star power personality.
Yeah, he just goes about his business. And eventually the business gets fighters there, hopefully. But for right now, he can't drop the belt because then no one's going to touch him with a 10-foot pole and no one's going to pay him what he's worth. So he's got to go through it. What I would really like to see, God bless you, Mr. Chukhadzian, I would like to see Boots give him just a fine beatdown and or make it just so humiliatingly easy. One of those 120 to 109 scorecards that makes it seem like taking candy from a baby, right?
Easy beat down, a couple of knockdowns along the way. Yeah.
The IBF, into having done this. But credit to Eddie Hearn for trying to make the best of a really awful, stinking situation. He put Bam Rodriguez on the card. Now, I got into it with one of our colleagues, and we won't name him, who's really irritated about this, who believes Bam has certainly earned the right to be the headliner in any card he appears on. But listen, this is good for Boots and for Bam. They have completely different natural fan bases.
Right.
Bam's a Mexican-American fighter out of San Antonio. Boots is a classic Philly guy, right?
What sense does it make for Bam to be the main event for this fight in Philadelphia when Bam's fan base, let's say for the most part, is still the American Southwest market? That make no sense.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're saying. Boots is the hometown
Meaning,
guy.
meaning, meaning, meaning Eddie Hearn purposely made this fight in Philadelphia, right?
Absolutely, because
Ennis is the hometown fighter.
yeah,
Why would Bam be the main event?
right. Gotcha. No, exactly. But what's happening, whether or not they did it in Philly versus San Antonio? Well, Boots has already proven he could put butts in the seats in Philly, right? So they're gonna get a little bit of the, his hardcore fans are gonna show up, even though
Especially,
they've already seen him
especially,
against this
excuse
guy.
me, excuse me, Gail. Especially considering, correct me if I'm wrong, but initially, Matchroom did not win the purse bid. They had to do this to give a solid to Boots. They had no choice.
I don't know that that's true, or why would they still have the fight? But it is a smart move to put these two guys on the same card. For those wondering why in the world are they on the same card, because you are introducing Boots to Bam's fans who are going to be watching. They are very loyal to him. You're going to be introducing, you know, Bam to Boots fans. And, you know, Philly fans are wonderful boxing fans. I think they're going to really take to Bam Rodriguez. That's going to develop his fan base. And that can be difficult for the small division fighters. We know how y'all feel about it. And we love the smaller division fighters on this podcast. However, they're a harder sell. That's just a practical fact. But if Bam can develop a second fan base out of Philly among Boots knowledgeable fans who are all going to be there, fill the seats, love him, even though they've got this stinking fight to see, at least they get to see him, right? Before he trips off to Saudi Arabia, never to be seen again, which is something we all have to think about now as fans when we get a chance to see these guys here on American soil. So it's a wonderful cross promotion between two completely different target audiences. It very much in the similar way Tank Davis and David Benavidez fought on the same card. David Benavidez cheerfully took the co-main event slot. No problem with that. Very similar thing. You're introducing David to Tank's fans, more so actually than you're introducing the Tank to Benavidez's fans. But it's is making the best of a bad situation in very smart marketing on Eddie Hearn's part.
Yeah, I'm looking it up
And
right
they're
now.
bundling them together. Boots and Bam seem to get along really well. They're enjoying sort of this, um, partnership. They're doing a lot of photo shoots and media together with their belts and getting their swagger on, and it's been kind of fun to watch. The buildup is going to be far more interesting, unfortunately, than the main event.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, PM2 outbidded Matchroom by 500,000, but
Yeah,
yet
there
this
you
fight
go.
is still happening in Philadelphia.
Well,
They had
right.
to do
Are you
this
gonna
for
really gonna make any money?
right,
Offshore here? No, you're not.
right. So yeah,
So
this was a
they're
solid.
smart because Boots has a proven ability to bring fans in when he fights in Philly.
And Bam has Matchroom has short and long term aspirations for Bam. So I get why, in theory, Bam has accomplished more based on that single factor. He should be main event, but that's short term thinking. My ability, long term, there should be no problem having Bam on the undercard. None. Your thoughts on this, Daniel?
I can just say this in the plain question. IBF, why are we getting this fight again?
That part.
Yeah, I'm like, I respect you as a sanctioning body because you as a sanctioning body, IBF, are the only one that tends to follow your own rules So you have that going for you, but sometimes you do it to the detriment of us all, fans. This is one of those times. Because now we have Boots fighting somebody he beat rather easily, fighting again. Eddie Hearn has egg on his face because he didn't even try to get his fighter into the purse bid. This is not a matchroom promotion. This is the other guy's promotion. And at the end of the day, we want to see Boots fight other people. I want to see Boots fight Staniosis. Even though we know
Barrios,
Eddie
for
and
that
Al
matter.
don't really like to work together, but I want to see that.
Or even
Not
Barrios.
this. Yeah. Like I said, I want to see that. But we have to settle where it is. Boots beat him pretty handily the first time. Outside of a Freaky Friday situation where they touched gloves, they exchanged skill sets, it should be just as easy for Boots to win again. But once again, IBF, I'm going to ask, why? As much as I respect you as a sanctioning body, why?
I think Gail's made the correct point. Matchroom specifically is trying to make the best out of a bad situation than out of something that outside of Karin's handlers, nobody else really wanted, and it is what it is. And the best scenario, excuse me, is for Giron is to not just win, but do so in impressive fashion. Get a couple of knockdowns along the way, maybe get a stoppage here, and um, wipe this dude out, and that way build up the excitement, build up the momentum, and move on to hopefully some unification matchups in 2025. And I think we're going to end that there, unless Gail, Daniel, you want to add any final notes uh, to this card, because I believe there's some other fights on here. Raymond Ford coming off of the close loss to Nick Ball, he returns to the ring. Ammo Williams, I believe, is fighting in their middleweight bouts. Any final words on this before we begin to shut things down?
These are both guys who have got to get back in the win column, and are going to get the opportunity to do that on this card. Also, you may be interested in some cards earlier in the week. There's a Pro Box card this week on Wednesday, and as you're recovering from the election, you may want to see some prospects going at it. We also get another card from Canada via ESPN and their arrangements with Eye of the Tiger, who do these Thursday night cards. And you're going to see, oh gosh, dang it, his name slips my mind, their Cuban prospect, Osley Iglesias.
Iglesias?
That he is in the main event in Canada on Thursday night. On the plus, super middleweight talent. He's got the IBO belt, which, is kind of meaningless, but he's in the top 10 super middleweight rankings, and he is coming on fast. So you find yourself looking for some entertainment on Thursday night, I warmly recommend these cards. All the Canadian cards that
Listen,
are fun to watch.
Listen, during our time away, I made the mistake of stepping up and covering that William Skull fight for Three Kings Boxing. Worst mistake I made in 2024, because oh my gosh, I regret that decision still. William Skull is Paul Butler to me right now, given how I'm given that fight. I'll say it. I don't care if he hasn't made a title defense. He's one of the worst world champions, quote unquote, in boxing. I don't even think he won that fight. He deserved the decision to win that belt. I'm still mad about it. And Iglesias, dare I say, will be better than anything I saw from William Skull during our time away.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting situation here in the next few months, because Skull's got that damn belt. He's going to be able to dangle it for a decent payday. But if I am anybody else in the top 10 in the division, I am banging on his door. I will be doing anything I could to get my hands on that belt.
Listen. To your point, if I am one of the top contenders at 168, if I'm Caleb Plant, if I'm Mabili, if I'm Pacheco, if I'm Jaime Munguia, I'm knocking at all doors to try to get this guy in the ring because
Yeah,
that's how little
100%.
I think of him.
Yep.
And there are
Yep.
reasons for all of them to pursue that belt. There's an argument to be made strategically for who you want to see capture that belt, because then all roads lead back to Canelo Alvarez, who doesn't have a whole lot of fights. And wouldn't it be a feather in his cap to get that belt back and once again retire as the unified, undisputed super middleweight champion and the first Mexican ever to do so in that division?
And I know the professional thing is to not display personal bias for and against a quote unquote fighter. But you didn't have to go through what I had to go through to watch that fight. And the nerve of some boxing fans out here in boxing Twitter to suggest that Skull put on a masterful performance. How dare y'all?
Well, I will just say that I watched the whole damn thing and nobody was asking me to report on it, and I still watched the whole damn thing. You know, sometimes you just got to pick at a scab, I guess. I mean,
That's
it was
called
just
one. That's called taking one for the team.
it was
Unfortunately,
so bad that the
yeah.
boxing hardcore were watching, enjoying bitching about it because it was so bad. It's the only thing we could have gotten out of it. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, let me get off my rant and we can shut things down on that note. I'll go around the panel here, begin the show with ladies first as always, and begin in the show with ladies first, excuse me. Gail from NYFights .com for those who want to talk all things boxing, let the folks know where they can find you.
Let me just suggest that if you got to watch some boxing action, there are club fights out there. Please support your local club fights with guys who really try hard, who may not have the skill level, but all the heart in the world. And that's where boxing builds its foundation. We will let you know about those at nyfights.com, and you can follow me on all the various social channels, and I'm always willing to have a chat with you. And I'm putting a lot more interviews up on my YouTube channel, which is Gail Falkenthal on boxing.
And there's only one disappointing aspect about tonight's episode, Gail. I wished you used this. Part of me wished you used the same profile here that you use on the new profile that you use on your personal Twitter, because
oh, you mean
that is dope.
Avatar?
Yeah, the avatar is dope.
You mean
The
my world champion WCBC belt? Well, I will make that change for next week.
I'll go to you, Daniel. For those who want to talk, Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber Wrestling Podcast. For those who want to talk all things sweet science, all things pro wrestling, and all things when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, what you can find me on all the major social platforms: Twitter, fuck you, Elon, never calling it X. Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Rocks99, RAWKUZ99. Definitely catch me on there. And we're literally an hour and a half away from probably it's going to be one of the most stressful days for a lot of people tomorrow.
Listen, I gotta work, so I'm not gonna indulge in that nonsense.
Most of us are working, but still, once we get out of work, we got to see how it's going to work. Like over here in New York, those polls close at 9:00.
Yeah. So I exercised my right and did the voting thing early, and yeah, to echo Daniel's point, that's going to be a hot mess, and y'all think that things are going to be decided Tuesday night. You dreaming, because this is unfortunately going to carry out for a significant amount of time. Part of me wished that I didn't have to work, not to watch that, so so that we could have this show tomorrow night to give a healthy diversion for those who don't want to watch that election coverage. But anyway, it is what it is. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with yours truly on Twitter, because like Daniel, I refuse to call it X. You can do so, Brother JR, at Brother JR76, or you can check me out on IG, Brother JRSC. On the next episode We will have a recap of what I think is going to be a very good fight between Keyshawn Davis and Gustavo Lemos. As Gail noted, fast rising lightweight. Uh, he's turning from a prospect to soon to be a contender. Abdullah Mason, terrific talent. He's going to fight on the undercard against Johan Vasquez. Um, that's going to happen again this coming Friday in Norfolk, Virginia on ESPN Plus. On Saturday on the Zone in Philly, Jaron Boots Ennis is going to defend the IBF welterweight belt against Karen Chukhadzian, excuse me, Chukhadzian. On the undercard, Jesse Bam Rodriguez is going to defend his WBC junior bantamweight belt against Pedro Guevara. And again, Raymond Ford, Ammo Williams is going to fight on that card as well. And we will have a preview of the rematch between now undisputed junior welterweight champion Katie Taylor. She's going to fight a second fight, her rematch with Amanda Serrano. On the undercard, uh, Mario Barrios going to defend his WBC welterweight belt against Abel Ramos. Shadeja Green, who last time we saw came up on the losing end against Franchon Cruz Discern. She fights Melinda Wapo, excuse me, for the vacant WBO belt at 168 pounds. Shushu Carrington is also fighting on that card. And I guess we may have to talk about it, have no choice, as that this should not be a sanctioned bout, but it is. Tyson's going to fight. Do I have to mention his name? I guess so. Jake Paul in Arlington, Texas on Netflix. So we will talk about all of those fights. And unification at cruiserweight over in Saudi Arabia between WBA champion Gilberto Ramirez, WBO champion Chris Billum Smith, unification bout at cruiserweight happening there. On the undercard of that, another cruiserweight title bout, one of your favorites, Daniel, knockout CP Freshmart, longtime WBA champion at 105, fighting WBO strawweight champion Oscar Calazo. On the undercard as well. And William Zepeda, who we talked about, mentioned while talking about Muratalla in the lightweight division. He's going to fight Tevin Farmer in what is a WBC interim lightweight title belt, as well as Jose Ramirez. Former unified champion at 140, fighting Arnold Barboza. So that's a really good card happening again over in Saudi Arabia on the 16th on the Zone. So we'll talk about all of those bouts. For Gail of NYFights.com, for Daniel of For Boxing News and the Inscriber, I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 461 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. And before we leave, I could not let this episode end without acknowledging sad news. Depends on how you want to put it. The passing of musical legend, icon, Quincy Jones, who passed away late last evening at the age of 91. 60, 70 plus year record in the music business. If you want to talk Michael Jackson, Off the Wall, and Thriller albums, he produced that. If you want to talk about Slow Dance, if you want to talk about I can't remember right. My head is having a brain freeze on me right now. Numerous hits, numerous albums that he produced throughout the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. You cannot talk music in the 1980s, especially without talking Quincy Jones. Too many hits, too many singles, too many albums to mention in this moment in time. But I want to acknowledge before we head off the passing of one, Quincy Jones. Again, for Gail, for Daniel, I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 461 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.